future online, so I'd like to submit an apology for him.
Thank you very much. Could I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Blakemore, seconded to Councillor McCone. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. That's carried. I'll now move on to agenda item 2 and ask for any declarations of interest if there are so. You assuming not, we'll clear that over and move on to agenda item 3, confirmation of the previous minutes. And I will draw your attention to those starting on page 7. Do I have any questions or comments on the minutes? Councillor Hopkins.
Chair, 2 corrections on page 13. One of them, in the second paragraph, 5th line, in agreeing to the borrower jumps at forecasted. I don't think there is such a word. It probably should be changed to just be that word forecast. And a bit further down, under the paragraph, other members also shared their views, which has been helpful. Second to last line, I think I understand what it means, but I'm raising it because I'm not 100% sure.
Sorry, where are you?
Where it's the paragraph that starts, other members on the same page, other members also shared their views that the report had been helpful. It's paragraph 5, I think. Second to last line was all going to land on the ratepayer one way or another from this entity of another. And I'm pretty sure it should be or, but it does say all. So those are the 2 corrections I would make. Well, request to be made.
Thank you. They seem both grammatical. It's a real simple for us to need. Any other?
No, maybe move the corrections as agreed.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that? Deputy Mayor Lalo, all those in favour? Against?
Mr. Chair, sorry, just allow me. We've got 50 pages in this again, but this is not what I'm about to say is criticism. I'm trying to actually look after the welfare and well-being officer. Of those 50 pages, 17 minutes. That's well over 30. And in my view, that's an unduly onerous burden on our secretary. And I believe the minutes could be considerably shorter and summarise much more expeditiously with bullets and the like. And I believe that applies to all of our meetings. And I believe there reduce a great deal of stress and pressure. So I should say point that our office is happy that more than the 50-page agenda is actually retrospective minutes. And if they're not, then if people are asking to choose minutes more system to read them some way.
Thank you for that. I calculate about 9 pages of minutes in there, but that aside, I absolutely take your point. It's a compliment that the minutes are so thorough, but in terms of wellbeing, certainly I think anything to do to help reduce that burden would be appreciated by all. Are there any other comments or feedback with regard to the minutes? Okay, thank you. So given that they have been moved, carried and voted on, we'll now move forward to agenda item 4, please, starting on page 17, and that will be the Treasury report. And I will invite Ms. Nichols to speak to that, please.
Yes, this is the Treasury report for the year 30 June 2024. It's the full financial year's results. They are still subject to audit and our final approvals on hearing processing speculation on these reports today, 30 June result, but they'll be pretty near and thereabouts. Overall, council is in a stable financial position, and it's basically the same story. Same throughout the year. Our debt is much higher than planned. This is due to the different opening position of debt that we had at 1 July last year that expected carry forwards that came into the 24 financial year. That had originally been in the 23 financial year, affected our borrowing. Our on lending to external entities is slightly higher than forecast. those groups council throughout the year. It's good to note that our interest revenue earned on that on lending is now being corrected to higher rates than what we are paying externally. So a bit there about our borrowing forecast into July. We had a big conversation in the last meeting about holding less in term deposit and call accounts, so we're actively trying to manage that. July, we had a really significant capital expenditure outflow, and so we required for an extra 5.5 million, but we are actively reducing risk in the call account and term deposits, trying to scrutinise as closely as we can the upcoming CapEx expenditure for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much. You and I have spoken at length prior to the meeting about the reports that are coming in. I'm extremely conscious that this is a very, very busy time of year for you and finance team, and that potentially parts of this were prepared in haste, but there's a fair few errors in here in terms of calculations that I'm going to take on to work with the team on correcting after this, and in preparation for the next report. And that includes some of the commentary around defining things as being significant or insignificant. For example, I think on page 23, we make reference to the fact that our borrowing, the effective interest rate for our borrowings was 5.04% against a budget of 4.29%. It's then referred to as being not materially different. I take umbrage with that. I think that a 17% difference in budget interest rate versus actual interest rate when you borrowing $71 million is very much materially different. So we'll pick up on some of those things going forward. Importantly, whilst not exactly pleasant reading, when we see external borrowings 42% higher than budgeted, none of this comes as a surprise to members of the path, given that it was all approved throughout the course of the year. On that note, I would like to open up any comments or feedback to the floor. Councillor McCone.
So yeah, probably what we're expecting, right? And as I believe and read it, was 17 million deficit at the end of 30th of June. So that's what I understand. It's a number, which then again puts all our budgets and financial planning for this year by that number. Do we have a policy when Rachel starts today? I think previous meeting. Do we have an action that we're going to actually turn down and squeeze those numbers down? Because we can't kill ourselves with interest and hit our budgets targets or borrowing targets way before then.
Sorry, Councillor McCone, you're referring to the Treasury report at the moment versus the financial summary would be. And so you're talking about us being $71 million in debt now, yes. And I think that that question follows on from the conversation in this morning's council meeting. I think Gary thoughts, and there was absolutely shared reluctance in that meeting to increase the level of the budgeted debt for next financial year at this stage, and a directive placed upon officers to work with staff and come back with some better ideas. But I think we're all very aware, especially if we consider the presentation by Amanda and Paul and the team last month on the long-term debt forecasts. We're all very well aware that it's simply not only is it not acceptable, it's actually not even doable to continue to borrow rates at the levels that forecast in the long-term plan. And it's not achievable because the LGFA will not lend us the money. So we absolutely need to take a very hard look at what's being forecast, what's affordable, and what, as per the previous meeting, what can be done potentially through the creation of CCOs or through setting up entities to be able to make the debt more reflective of, and the costs of servicing that debt more reflective of where it's occurred. Again, yes,
Sorry, just
a little bit here that I may not have answered your question.
Well, yes and no, but I'm probably on marks, but we do a lot of talk about it. We don't actually see anything happening about it. Do we need to set that in motion now? Because before we know at those levels, so we'll have nowhere to go. Do we set the how do we do it and when do we do it? And I think sooner the better.
So I'll hand back to Amanda to talk to that.
Yeah, this is going to be part of the projects will come back to council, which will be in August. And this is just going to be a huge topic of conversation. So we start to plan the financial strategy for the next 10 years. It really work out how quite to complete.
And I think this morning was a good example of where you have collectively as a council stepped up and said, actually no, simply can't. We need to see how things progress over the next while, and we need to have, and we are not prepared to approve spend that will incur additional external debt above and beyond what we've currently approved. So we need to go away and think about it and come back. And to Amanda's point, that thinking's just going to get even deeper and harder when we start to look at some of those out years beyond 27, 28. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, just clarification, as much as anything, on that first page 17, under summarised results, you say the council's net position, interest earning investments against external borrowers is 25 minus 25.8 billion. That's shown down the bottom as a net position as well. I take it that's what you're, I take it you're telling us that's situation that existed on June 30 in the financial year. Okay. Now, if I just, again, I think I know, but if I'm a member of the public looking at this page, they'd see that 2 years ago in 2023, 1 year ago, we were only basically in the hole to the tune of 1,260,000. We thought we'd be in the hole to the tune of 390 now. And we're actually in the hole for, as you say, 25.8 million. Would it be reasonable if somebody came to me and said, what's going on? Would it be legitimate for me to say this is largely a borrowing increase forced upon us by the operating services? Or not? Is that the number of the explanation?
Our debt is used to fund capital projects. The majority of our projects are in relation to that. That's a fair answer.
Chair, couple. Now the Marama airfield one, I think there's an explanation there. I have a feeling that's to do with the subdivision. But I also was mildly surprised to see Wayland Lodge Trust at nearly 1.4 million. I was under the impression that the total quantity offered the trust was less than that, and also that we had actually flagged that, I know it's a part of the council, but we had actually flagged that recouping that loan would be a wood charge. Am I right in both of those things?
You're right in the second one, but not the first one. So the wood, so the original borrowing was around 700,000, and then the trust came back with presented a paper to council saying that the actual cost of the development was significant. And that's when we had the discussion about using a rating tool to help service that second piece of debt. And we consulted on that, and that is part of the rating strategy.
Yes, just to clarify, that's from Brad's going. We're looking at stuff now previously.
Did you have any supplementary, Councillor Hopkins?
So, well, possibly just the amount of lead on Marama, the significance of it being advances So, sorry, I had thought that we're willing to carry certain costs associated with the imposed subdivision. That was it. They were going to be, that very short-term loan was going to be repaid in pretty short. But the commentary here doesn't quite tell you what I thought we were doing. Why? So, yeah, I noticed the affordable payment at November 2025. So, am I right? We should to do with their residential developments.
That's correct. So both in terms of development and development itself, so some of the development. And I think we'll also need to treat the deferred development contributions as effectively as a loan to a CCO just for transparency purposes and mention for the consolidation. So it's very to defer the repayment of the paying profit for contributions.
Which I think we can have further discussion of to the public explainers. The track. Any other questions or feedback with regard to either summarised results or the discussion around the loans and advances to other entities? Yeah, I'd just like to then pick up, if I may, on a comment that you made earlier, Amanda, which is at the bottom of page 22. And if we refer to the minutes in here of the previous meeting, it refers to my discomfort and dissatisfaction with us having money sitting in the bank, earning no interest when we could be paying back some of the debt we've got, or in fact not rolling over new debt we've got. And we talked at the time about cash flow forecasting, about being able to work out what our bills were and where things were coming through. And I know from conversations with you and Paul that you did a lot of work around that this last month, and you managed to in fact pay down a significant amount of that cash that was in the bank, only to then be faced with a $5.5 million invoice that you hadn't been told was coming. And so what I want to do here is, one, sympathise with the difficulty you have cash flow forecasting when business units aren't able to provide you with accurate updated information, but two, call out the fact that I'm now extremely dissatisfied with the low level of interaction that you're getting from those business units. I would expect that if I went out to any of the business units at the council and asked them to please tell me what their outstanding creditors were and what invoices they were expecting to see come through in the following month, especially in the last month of the financial year, that they would be able to have told you that you wouldn't have had to repay money and then draw money down again at a shorter and even more expensive rate to cover a bill that somebody should have seen coming. So I'm just sharing my frustrations and again offering to work with you, Paul, and whoever we need to in the finance team to help us get better estimates of what our cash flows are looking like. And I do feel like I may have scratched an itch for Councillor McCone here.
Yes, you have, and it just puzzles me why that communication system doesn't work. You know, is there something we can do put that together, as you alluded to, that it just have a paper trail or it's part of business where you must know, yes, financially what your outgoings are, what your income is. Keep it current.
I'll then remember talk to that and close with the goalface.
Yeah, I guess this outlines one of the transforming ways of working as one team. So at the moment we have a new budgeting process system being updated behind the scenes. That's going to go out to managers shortly. There's been a significant change. Our work structure has just been released, and so there's a bit of movement with managers and stuff at the moment. There's a lot of parent long-term plans. Just lots going on. So I think taking it on board, the finance team is involved. We just need to proactively go out and ask for it, sit with the departments. But hopefully this new budgeting system will be a lot more transparent for everyone. They're able to take ownership of their land, their new positions in structure. They're responsible for their budget, we're to account monthly and make it into information.
Thank you. I think asking for it's one side of the equation. We also need to call it get it as well. Thank you for offering to help try and remediate that if able to. So thank you. Look, are there any other questions or comments before I ask for somebody to move that we receive the treasury? So, Councillor Klein, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That's carried. We'll now move forward to agenda item 4.2, and that is the financial summary. Again, Amanda, I'll invite you to speak to that before.
Okay, so this is our draft results for the full year to 30 June 2024. Overall, there is a $15.6 million deficit against a budget surplus of $1.6 million. Still very draft results. We're still going through our groups, making sure we capture everything that's related to that June 24 year end is booked in the 24 financial year. And we also looked at our valuations here, construction valuation, revaluations. But yeah, the current picture is looking at around a $15.6 million deficit. But we have been outlining the variances for this. It's changed much throughout the year. The revenue is significantly lower because we didn't receive the funding, student grant funding, sports and event centre. And there's also a few other projects talked about page 34. And then on the other side of the fence, the expenditure is outlined on table page 35. It's got different reasons for the overruns. It's broken down by various types of expenditure on page 35. In terms of the balance sheet, we've just spoken about debt. CapEx is outlined by department on page 37. A lot of that is associated with those big projects like the sports and event centre, which hasn't been managed this year. Deferred to next financial year.
Thank you. And then you've also got that, you mentioned for revaluations, but there's the $44 million gain on the infrastructure assets. So in there as part of the revaluation as well. So it's again not pleasant reading, but not unexpected. And I'll make the same comment here about some of the commentary that sits alongside some of the numbers here as well. In fact, that I think if it's difficult for me to follow the logic of some of the commentary, I suspect it's quite difficult for members of the public to follow some of the commentary. And I look at examples like on page 32, the bottom couple of paragraphs there, borrowings are reported at a higher level than was allowed due to the level of capital expenditure. Then on the following line, we talk about capital expenditure for the period being below budget. Both of those are right, but they don't read like they complement one another. Councillor McCone.
So I just have a brilliant question. I think the revaluation of assets. So that is a paper valuation. Has anybody actually done an actual valuation so we actually know if it's actually what that value itself is?
That's not like
I'm not really sure what you mean by paper valuation. I mean, it's applying you basically values against the updated quantities that we have looked for the system. So these are based on the as-built data and GIS systems. So they're updated all the time with physical changes from all the contracts that we do. So it's not just a desktop exercise, it's primarily desktop exercise. There's certainly a reasonable degree of physical checks against the system. Very hard to make a pipeline dispute. I suppose it's not sure what you really mean by just purely paper exercise.
So, especially with the building side of things, so real estate might have the $500,000 if the reality is worth $400,000. So you're using that to peg an equity is a small business. So this is what I'm saying, is the peer review of one of the word of what those assets are building, what they're actually beyond with basement is such.
Yes, certainly. In terms of property, the 3-year revaluation stuff like independent valuers who do, do come down to the down into physical inspections of the buildings to make sure that they're actually accurately reflecting the true value they collect. A reasonable amount of market data to help establish those values. So yeah, it is quite a different process to be the far more of the desktop process as opposed to that quotable value go through to establish the categories that we use for the rating system, because that's the only practical value.
From the basis of the question is whatever is down. Does that affect their ability to borrow services?
We don't actually do any borrowing against our assets. The only security we provide is the ability to rate. It's what, just the ability to tax, which, that's what's practical. And the credit agencies actually rate that far more than they rate security against assets, because, as you said, the value of assets can go down and that can affect them, whereas your ability, council's ability to rate, it doesn't diminish. But it does, that's one of the key factors that drives the limits that LGFA said. So it's very understand committees support so much before it's up for so that's what made this their criteria rather than SEPs.
Noted. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, a few questions here. Look, the first one is on page 32. And you're talking about the scheduled revaluation of roading and water's infrastructure still to be processed. And if I look at the figures next page, other comprehensive revenue and expenses, it looks as though infrastructural assets have jumped from 31 million to 75 million. Now, am I right in assuming that this whole business of depreciation valuation was something that the shipping government introduced in the last years of the 20th century to make council start to actually look after the invisible infrastructure that had been in a lot of instances pre-1989 and think for years? And if I'm right about that, am I also right to say that we're effectively at the point where this is becoming an unaffordable component of council expenditure? And if I'm right about that, the fundamental question is, when are we going to address this and how are we going to address it? Because it seems to me, effectively, the only thing we can do is actually resolve to unfund a much more significant part of our network and not rate for depreciation. We might say, identify 20% of the roading that we will allow and effectively to die slowly over time because of its minimal use or whatever. But am I right in the assumptions I've made? And when are we going to start actually biting this particular terrifyingly big bullet?
Often questions. I just want to point out as well before we're talking about the point that the code raised about the assets. There's no market for selling so much securities there, which makes sense. In terms of council questions, firstly, the equity movement, it is because of the opening figures. So when we set the budget for the 24 financial year, we didn't know the revaluation increase at 30 June 23. So that has made the opening variance in equity. It's confusing to explain, but so it's because of last year's valuation that there's a difference in the equity line even. I feel that it's important that we do value the assets accurately. We have independent valuers every 3 years. And the main point is because that helps us budget for depreciation appropriately with the current costs of rebuilding our roading and water. We can put aside money for depreciation. If we didn't put away money for depreciation at all, we would be in an even worse debt situation. If we didn't rate for it, we would have to borrow. So we couldn't do that. We're in this tough position now because we've only started depreciating 30 years ago. Our depreciation bucket is too small to do all this CapEx work that we need to do, which is when the pipes under the ground need replaced. We haven't depreciated enough, so we have to rate for it, to borrow for it. And that's the predicament that we're in right now. So I feel that it's important that we revalue our assets as often as we can, so that we have a real idea of how much they cost, so that we can depreciate over the life of them, so that we need to replace them. We have depreciation funds there to replace them.
Just to add to that too, Amanda, remember we talked last time around the audit and the fact that if there's a narrow materiality component as well that requires us to revalue pretty much every year now because of the inflation and the value of the underlying asset. But sorry, I interrupted. I think we're about to add something.
And it's even worse than that.
So for it.
Well, if you look at the requirements of the water service delivery as set out in the most recent bill that looks like it's just to be enacted, council will, whoever the water service provider is, will have even less choice. And it will have to set out how the requirements are, how are you meeting the standards, and how are you making this affordable, and what you're doing. So there will be even less wiggle room in the water space to play with unfunded depreciation, because it will just mean, those plans need to be approved by the Secretary of Internal Affairs. If they're not standard, they'll appoint someone else to draw it up for you. So one of the levers that we've had in the past was about to disappear. So you're right, it's going to get down to, well, if the community can't afford it, what assets are we not going to replace, and there's less choice of the ones that could fall into that bucket.
What I'm trying to ask is, has the time come when we have to say to the community, and we're still central government as well, in my view, collectively and individually, you are pushing councils out of business, this constant requirement to revalue and either rate for depreciation and or borrow is actually producing utterly unaffordable costs for an increasingly large number of smaller councils with smaller rating bases. And some of the examples of that come up recently, Fed Fund, with things in Otago. What I'm trying to say is that it's just the only way out of this is to actually say that regarding our rate of depreciation and borrowing, we ain't going to do either for a lot of the stuff. We're just going to basically be the dies and dimes. And that's the only way we can avoid going in profit. Am I right?
As we've said, this is going to be one of the most fundamental conversations in the long-term plan.
And
The community, a community has a choice. It's going to be, do you want your road speed, or do you want services? We're going to have those discussions.
yes, or in the case of some councils where they're implemented metering, there's that third wheel, which is you're giving the control back to you to a degree to be able to be the master of your own costs. But I think to your point, Councillor Hobbs, it is absolutely not just a small council, small ratepayers issue residing in Wellington. I can promise you that it is a significant issue for some fairly decent sized ratepayer bases as well. But your point around revaluation is valid. We spoke to it, I think, last par as well. But again, Amanda and Paul have very, very strong arguments of why why there's benefits associated with reevaluation and associated depreciation as well. So it is, but it is absolutely coming very much to the surface. Councillor Blackburn.
Oh, just a question on depreciation. If the asset life is for an extended period, say 50 to 80 years, in year one, based on the value of the asset, how do the calculations basically allow for the fact that the asset will be worth more to replace at the end of the life? Do you get what I mean? Like, will it by default be underfunded right from the beginning, or is there kind of a reverse calculation to kind of take that into consideration?
Well, they recognise, yeah, that's recognised, but I think that's why the revaluation is so that it's only valued in year one, and then you have to replace it at year 50. So no, you need to build up to what that anticipated replacement be.
But so say by the time you get to the midpoint, say, the asset might be worth, I don't know, 3 times as much or something. Say the depreciation that's been picked up along the way wouldn't cover off 50% of the replacement.
There's always going to be a short.
Because of the inflationary costs associated with replacement. Yep. So it might have cost you $10 million to build this year, but in 25 years' time, you've got to build, it's going to cost you $20 million, but you've only been able to appreciate from 10.
I think that emphasises why it's important to revalue regularly. So if you went to the 50 years, it didn't revalue, then you get to the end of the 50 years and you're going to say it cost 10 million and now it's worth 15 million. You've only got depreciation worth 10 million. So you got 40 million short. If you revalue it every 3 years, see, okay, that when it's 3 years old, it's gone up to 13 mil. Then you'll depreciate, say your depreciation rate's 10%, you depreciate at 13. So it becomes 1.3 depreciation per year. It's originally 1.1 mil. So that's what I was trying to emphasise before. So the revaluation increase in equity, it is what it is. The asset value, it is what it is. We can't resell it. It's really important for depreciation because we revise our depreciation based on the new value so that we can capture that cost over the useful life of the asset.
But there will always be a shortfall. Just the less frequently you revalue, the much greater that shortfall will be, because you're not able to capture the revaluation. Councillor Hopkins.
Mr. Chair, just ask a couple of quite precise and specific questions about line items on the next 2 pages. Can Amanda or Paul advise why the protected government grants and subsidies are about 4.5 million less, and why other grants and donations are down from 5,034.
Is this specifically in relation to the page 33?
Yes, it is, yes.
So you'll see over the page they've explicitly called out exactly what associated losses were associated with that. So it was $5.2 million of roading funding that was cancelled. Transport Choices roading funding that was cancelled almost as soon as the new government came in. And then the other grants, $4.9 million is associated with grant revenue not received for the Waitaki Event Centre.
Well, okay, so, right. So I got I thought I got the event centre one. I did have another question on that next page. But if the explanation regarding the difference in government grants and subsidies, that doesn't entirely make sense to me, because what we had was the previous government saying that they wanted to do certain things in roading, and they essentially were going to pay for the lot. And they told us what we could include and asked us what we wanted to include in response to their directive that we had to do some of these changes. When the panel was pulled, basically all that happened was a whole tranche of work we hadn't gone out voluntarily, willingly of our own forward, agreed to do, rather than as a response to a government directive. So, in a sense, we never had them. Yes, it might have been promised, but so even though
That revenue was still included in margins. So we have both sides in the included in the actual plan.
all right, okay, that's well. Look, one other very quick question on that page. There's a reference to better off funding. Slow progress on projects resulted in reduced income from the source. Now, does that? What I think that means is we've had less by payments, but we haven't had a reduced total fund for DIA. Or have we? I know we've been asked to revisit voluntarily relinquish some of the money, but it was presented to us very recently that the original fund was still in place and play. So, is that reference to reduced income simply money forthcoming rather than total approved sum offered by DIA?
Yeah, so it's a matching principle. As we spend the money, we receive it back from DIA. And this is just by saying slow, it's meant as a timing difference. It hasn't happened in this financial year.
But just to add to that, it doesn't disappear at the end of the financial year if we haven't used it. It's the commitment to match is still there for the next financial year. Yes. Any further questions, Councillor Hopkins? Any further questions for floor at all? Okay, look, if not, then I thank you all and Amanda and the finance team for pulling this together. It is hard reading, and it will be harder reading to finalise the numbers, but I think there's a really strong conscious awareness around the table of what that means, especially for us going forward. So on that basis, could I please ask for somebody to move to receive the financial summary? Moved by Deputy Mayor Halale, seconded by Councillor Ryan. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That now brings us on to public excluded section. So could I ask, please, could I please firstly thank those in the public who are online for attending today's meeting. We appreciate your audience. And could I please ask for the public section to have it closed and ask somebody for us to move that we go to public excluded. Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Councillor Blackler, my apologies. All those in favour? Okay, thank you. And we'll now move for a short break.